To watch all of my exclusive content not featured here on my channel, log on to my website at imjustheretomake-you-think.com/films. Looking at this from a broader perspective, these types of governmental actions are a nod to the uncommonly known set of individual state laws called the Black Codes of 1865, not to be confused with the segregation laws that were later nicknamed as Jim Crow laws. The Black Codes of 1865 are a set of standards or policies in which each state government individually followed religiously. These particular policies deal with civil rights, labor contracts, vagrancy, apprenticeship, crimes, punishment, and other restrictions against American Indians. But its main focus was on education and apprenticeship, but not for adults. This was strictly about control and indoctrinating the mindsets of the Indian children. Because it was said that if you teach or train a child how to be a better servant, then that child will grow into his adulthood wanting to be a better servant for the rest of his life, simply because that's all he knows. The Black Codes were also used by all state governments as a manipulative means to legally force American Indians into uncontrollable, life-changing situations, which eventually resulted in the removal of the parent as being the head of the household. This is all about Reconstruction, just as it was in the year 1865 when the Black Codes were introduced. But this wasn't about any physical Reconstruction. No, it's strictly a political Reconstruction, being as though the younger generation is more vulnerable to fear-mongering via social engineering from either party of the political spectrum. Now, I would like for you to note the Oxford's dictionary definition of the word education. It defines it as the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, and that may seem harmless at first until you discover its etymology, which states that it is a Middle French word that means child rearing, or the training of animals. And in the 1828 Webster's English Language Dictionary, it states that the word educate derives from the Latin word educo, which means to lead. But the definition, however, states that it means, quote, to bring up as a child, to instruct, to inform and enlighten the understanding, to instill into the mind principles of arts, science, morals, religion, and behavior. And in this same English Language Dictionary of 1828, the word education is defined as, quote, the bringing up as of a child, instruction and discipline, which is intended to enlighten the understanding, correct the temper, and form the manners and habits of youth, and fit them for usefulness in future stations. End quote. Is it apparent that these Black Codes are still active today, just as they once were in 1865, including the chains and the shackles? Mind you that the Civil Rights Act was enacted a year later, on April 9th, 1866, in which this act offered all individuals born in the US the right to franchisement, meaning that anyone could own a business, sell a product, provide a service, and make profits. What is also very important to note here is that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 also allowed all individuals to, quote, make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, and give evidence, to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property, and to full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of person and property as enjoyed by white citizens." End quote. This part alone exposes exactly just what it means to be white. It is not regarded as a skin complexion in a legal sense, but rather a status that allows for access to freedoms that all other persons are denied. This created an immediate problem for those that were in favor of seeing the American industry grow the way they see fit, because the Civil Rights Act of 1866 contradicted the Black Codes of 1865, therefore making the Black Codes falling in jeopardy to be legally overturned if someone wanted to raise the issue. So Congress responded with the passing of the 14th Amendment, which states, quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." End quote. The 14th Amendment was passed by Congress on June 13, 1866, just 2 months after the Civil Rights Bill of 1866 was enacted, and it was thought to have allegedly extended the liberties and rights granted by the Civil Rights Bill. However, that is very far from the truth, because the 14th Amendment says here that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge, meaning cut off, the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. So, what are these privileges and immunities that are referenced here? Now, instead of us assuming or guessing for ourselves, the original but yet unpopular definition of the word privilege is defined in the 1828 Webster's English Language Dictionary as a private law or public act in regards to an individual. And the term immunity is defined as an exemption from public service or charge, a special privilege, revealing that the terms privilege and immunity are one and the same, and are used in the 14th Amendment to refer to 2 types of private laws. The immunities or special privilege refers to what is known as state immunity under international law, which is a private roaming law that correlates with terms like civilian, which is one who is skilled in Roman law. You hear that? Roam, roaming. The verb roam means to move about from place to place without any certain purpose or direction, just like the adjective resident, which means dwelling or having an abode in a place for a continuance of time, but not definite. A resident is another way of calling someone a transient, which is a person that is passing or traveling through a place, one without settled habitation. A squatter should ring a bell here. And according to Volume 2, Issue 5 of the Law Research Journal, state immunity is the principle of international law that exempts a state from prosecution or suit for the violation of domestic laws of another state. Immunity does not confer solely in an individual per se. Rather, it attaches to an office, and the individual occupant of that office at any point in time enjoys the immunity attaching to that office. a state is immune from all judicial processes of its courts and the courts of other states. This means that under the sovereign state immunity concept, a foreign sovereign cannot be impleaded, or rather sued, in the court of another state without its concepts. This rule is hinged on the international law maxim, par imparem non habet imperium, meaning that equals have no power over an equal. The principle of absolute immunity has now been abandoned in many jurisdictions to embrace the principle of restrictive immunity approach, which does not attach immunity to the commercial acts of a sovereign. The courts of a country can only assume jurisdiction over a foreign sovereign or diplomat when that sovereign has waived the immunity. End quote. Where the 14th Amendment states that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, this means that no state shall make or enforce any law that cuts off the private laws that each state has previously enacted. So in other words, people are assuming and misinterpreting the 14th Amendment as if it extends or somehow expands unverifiable protection of liberties and rights of U.S. citizens, when in actuality, it just simply confirms that a citizen of the United States is not exempt from any private laws created by federal and state governments. And the catch-22 is that minors were not and have never been regarded as full persons or citizens until the age of maturity, which is 21 for males and 18 for females, in which this part alone allowed for the black codes to be legally carried out against all of the children, especially those children who are various shades of the color brown, unmolestedly, as slaves, apprentices, or rather indentured servants. Acts that were passed by the General Assembly in Louisiana in 1865 stated, according to black codes and relative to apprentices and indentured servants, it shall be the duty of sheriffs, justices of peace, and other civil officers of the state to report to the clerks of the district courts of their respective parishes, and in the parish of Orleans, left blank, to the mayor of the city of New Orleans, and on the right bank to the president of the police jury on the first Monday of each month for each and every year. All persons under the age of 18 years if females and 21 if males who are orphans or whose parents, or tutor have not the means or refuse to provide for and maintain said minors, and thereupon shall be the duty of the clerks of the district courts, mayor, and president of the police jury aforesaid to examine whether the party or parties so reported from time to time come within the purview and meaning of this act, and if so, to apprentice said minor or minors in manner and form as prescribed by the Civil Code of the state of Louisiana, provided that orphans coming under the provisions of this act shall be authorized to select said employers when they have arrived at the age of puberty, unless they shall have been previously apprenticed. End quote. Now, with all of that being said, we can easily determine exactly who the government and other correlating entities and corporations have hired as their apprentices, employees, indentured servants, laborers, or what some of you may call slaves. This is why they tell you the lie that genealogy records can only go but so far back in time in order to hide the truth. Because during the 1860s, it was literally the offsprings of our ancestors who were forced into rebuilding, reorganizing, and reconstructing this America as we know it, for free. But not as mainly adults, but as copper-colored children that were seized by the millions, or rather kidnapped from their parents, as if they broke a law of some kind that they never even consented to in the first place. I'm just here to make you think.